economy because payment costs come down, and it ends up being a positive feedback loop. They could also raise interest rates. If the Bank of Japan were to raise interest rates first, the U.S. could lower interest rates, and then that would also drive demand and help with liquidity for those that need it. Until the reverse carry trade unwinds, there's too much economic risk for the stock market and other risk on assets. You saw the market continue to go up today, even with all of this turmoil going on. So we'll see, who blinks first, whether it's the Fed or the Bank of Japan. But if Japan were to start to implement distributed ledger technology, one of the interesting things that they've done here recently is they designated XRP as a financial asset there in Japan. And what that means is they can start to use it inside of their banking infrastructure. Yoshitaka Kitao, who is the president and principal of SBI, which is one of the largest financial conglomerates there in Japan, has been a huge advocate for Ripple, R3, and for XRP for a long time. And I do believe that they are going to start leveraging XRP to be able to increase the velocity of money there in their economy. Do they raise interest rates when they're doing that? That makes sense to me. You would want to strengthen your currency and raise interest rates in opposition to the velocity of money picking up. The Fed is on the other side of that fence. They're probably going to want lower interest rates to be able to provide access to liquidity. So your guess is as good as mine on when this is finally going to play out. All of the economic factors are still at play here. This could happen tomorrow. It could happen next week. It could happen really at any time. But we will see what the Bank of Japan does tomorrow in their meeting. Again, that'll happen about this time, Tuesday night here in the U.S. So make sure you're on the lookout for that, and we will end up... What are you doing?
Oh, if they were saying it's too bright, I was trying to make it better. Sorry. It is a little bright.
It's fine. Thank you. My wife. My wonderful wife with the tea, and always trying to look out for me to make sure I'm looking my best and I'm not too bright on the TikTok or on the YouTube. So anyway, we find ourselves right here in this economic moment where this transition's about to take place one way or another. And hopefully you guys are on the right side of history. Hopefully you are, I can't tell you what to do, and this is probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with an attorney, a CPA, or a financial advisor before making any tax, legal, or financial decisions. The opinions shared here are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners, which I have economic interest in. Obviously, we provide access to professionals that are licensed and have the certifications in order to be able to provide you with that advice. We would love to have you. If nothing else, this information's hopefully valuable in that you'll know what questions to ask when you are approaching professionals in order to be able to, mitigate risk, structure your estate, mitigate taxes, and make sure that you are able to maintain your wealth over an extended period of time. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into the questions. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me. Please like, subscribe, share. It does help the algorithm, and we'll go ahead and jump into it. We got Weird Kids TV. It's an interesting name. They say, Jake, appreciate your content. Ego to the side, you seem not too confident of the reverse carry trade after all the chaos. So now what's next? Because you always said it was going to happen. Is XRP cooked? Will we see 2 digits? Look, it's still going to happen. They've been able to continually kick the can further along than I thought that they could. And I would love to tell you it's tomorrow, right? St. Patty's Day, I'm wearing my green. But I don't know. I wish I had a definitive timeline for you guys. This person says, I'm tired. Bro, I'm tired too. I was telling my wife earlier before I got on here. Look, I will say this. There's been moments in my life where I've been right at the end of something, right before it worked out, and I feel like giving up. I feel tired. I feel beaten down. And that's right before it works out. Almost every single time. So if you're feeling that way, not to say that it couldn't drag on longer, like I just said, but I feel very confident that we are going to see things move here. The Fed's in between a rock and a hard place, and they're going to have to do something to get themselves out of it. So, you know, we have Evernorth launching here at the end of Q1. If Ripple knew when things were going to work out and what would be a good time for them to catch that ride, seems likely that they would plan that to be able to launch at the right time. The people that are launching that used to work at Ripple. So, you know, again, there could be a nothing burger, but it could also be a linchpin. I mean, it could be a signal. So, lots of things on the horizon here. I don't think you're going to see XRP at 2 digits. I don't think that's ever going to be a thing. I think it's going to be, you know, where it's at now, or we're going to see it at significantly higher prices, 3-4 digits. I think it's going to go right past 2 digits. I don't think you're going to see that. So it's either one or the other. It's either, you know, all or nothing, in my opinion. I think if we were going to get a piece of the pie, that would have already happened. I think it's the whole enchilada that XRP is going to end up with. And that is going to be on the other side of the reverse carry trade and the implementation of XRP in Japan's economy by their central bank. Jack says, congrats on the hard work for DAG. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. He says, God bless you and your family. Where will there be an IRA that takes the fees out instead of having to pay out of pocket? We actually just launched our IRA product to be able to generate cash and additional XRP inside of that account. We are the only people that have an algorithmic trading strategy overlaid on top of the IRA accounts. There are no other platforms in the world that do that. So if you want to work with Digital Wealth Partners and Digital Ascension Group to be able to manage your IRA and be able to compound your XRP and generate enough cash inside there to be able to pay off the fees associated with what we charge, we always want to be providing more value. It's been a long time coming on the yield product and some of the other stuff that we've been working on, but I feel like that's pretty close. I don't know if you guys got to catch the podcast that dropped this morning, but we just did a podcast with Mike Higgins, who is the international CEO of Ripple Prime. If you haven't checked that out, I would encourage you to go check it out. He lays out exactly what Ripple Prime does in correlation with the rest of the companies that Ripple's acquired over the past year. And talks about One Ripple, which is the full financial stack of products and solutions that they can bring to enterprises and institutions for them to be able to create their own stable coin, manage risk across their balance sheet, generate additional returns through, you know, the liquidity that they provide and margin against those other assets. It was really cool to understand. You know, I've talked with Mike a couple times, but to have him come on and explain that at scale was really helpful. And if you want to understand that at a deeper level, I would highly encourage you to go check it out. And, you know, it'd be cool if we could partner with them in some capacity at some point, which he did mention at the end of the podcast. So we'll see how long that takes. But yes, to circle back to the question at hand, the IRA product that we have launched does generate additional cash, which can cover the fees. Schmoopus, Doug, good to see you, my dude. He says, Jake Levi Legend, what's up, dude? Walk out your vision of the ultimate matured family financial business philanthropic structure. What entities would it include? Oh, man. So we have a full resource over there for the mastermind on the website that walks you through what I think will be at a high level the main pieces involved with the full estate plan that many people will choose to use on the other side of price appreciation. But if you aren't in the mastermind, you can charge. You can come in for $2 if you use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar. At the end of that, gets you the first month for $2 there. If you're Carbon 1, you get access to that resource on the website. You can watch the video, but I will lay it out here for you. So the LLC is where most people start. They will, you know, add their digital assets to the LLC for the creditor protection, the anonymity, and the tax benefits that you could potentially get. It does not immediately, you know, allow you to mitigate taxes. You just get the full breadth of the tax code to be able to offset your taxes versus having it in your personal name where you can't get access to a lot of those things. So the LLC, again, creditor protection, charging order protection there in Wyoming, attorney-client privilege, which gives you the anonymity, and then the legislation there in Wyoming, which allows you to really use those assets at scale across pretty much whatever you want to do. If you're in one of these states that kind of limits your ability to participate in things, that having your assets in the LLC will open you up to be able to participate on other platforms that you might be restricted from. So most people start there, and then many people will set up a living trust. Sometimes they put they assign the equity and the assets from the LLC to their living trust. I think many people will end up choosing to set up a C Corp later on, where their living trust sits on the cap table of that C Corp. The C Corp will not own the LLC. You'll likely have some type of irrevocable trust or asset protection trust or intentionally defective grantor trust, which are all irrevocable, by the way, that owns the majority of the equity or a portion of the equity of the LLC. And then the C Corp would end up being what you use to manage those assets. So as you produce significant cash flow off of these assets, the fees that the management corp or the C Corp charges can be pretty substantial. And then you're going to pay 20% taxes on that because your living trust is on the cap table, which you can do with the C Corp, which you can't do with an S Corp. You still get all of that inside your estate. You probably have a pour-in will to make sure that anything that you acquire over your lifetime that's not stipulated in your trust or your will pours into your revocable living trust. You and your spouse may have separate revocable living trusts, or they might have the same revocable living trust. Just depends on how you want to structure it and what assets want to go where. Also kids and beneficiaries. And then the C Corp might also manage other LLCs that are owned by other types of trusts. The reason that it doesn't own them directly, a lot of people have asked me that question. Well, a C Corp has stock, and if you are in a lawsuit, a creditor sues you, they take control of the stock. If the C Corp owns assets, they can liquidate those assets and basically give you back the useless stock that's no longer valuable. You want to mitigate that risk while still getting the tax advantages, and that's why many family offices structure themselves as a C Corp that manage the underlying LLCs, where the LLCs themselves are owned by the revocable trust, or the irrevocable trust. So as you continue to expand your estate and buy other assets, you may set up other irrevocable trusts and LLCs that own those. Till says we can't give you financial advice. This is just, so I'll say it this way. This is how I'm looking at my estate and structuring it. You guys can do what you want. The other thing, especially with the philanthropic component that you mentioned, there's a lot of different avenues to be able to get tax advantages and also get things out of your taxable estate while you're still maintaining some benefit and some control. A charitable remainder trust is a great option for that. We can do those in kind. You can add your XRP or your Bitcoin or your ETH or whatever you're holding into that. And as long as it's structured the right way and the money moves the right way, there's no issue with that. You can hold those assets inside of that charitable remainder trust. You are going to want to designate some charity as the beneficiary of that, and a portion of that will flow back to you over your lifetime, whatever's generated inside of that irrevocable trust, the charitable remainder trust, and then another portion of that will flow to the charities of your choice. Another popular way that people have been able to get things out of their taxable estate, get the tax write-off, and also maintain some control of the assets and benefit is a donor-advised fund. That's become much more popular over the last 5 or 6 years. People will structure those. You can donate to somebody else's donor-advised fund. They're a little bit more complicated and a little more costly to set up yourself. The other thing that you can do is set up a family foundation or a public charity. Both of those, again, are going to be a little more complicated, a little more costly. They're going to take some time to structure. But they are great options, especially if you do, want to do good with the money and you want to involve your children and make sure that they have, the values that you want to pass on. Many families start to involve their children in the family foundation somewhere between 10 and 12 years old, just to cultivate those values and beliefs so that they're of the mindset that giving is good and that things are abundant. So that's at a high level. Some of the things that you might look at. Insurance policies are another huge piece of that. A lot of wealthy people move assets into insurance policies, PPLI, private placement life insurance. If you're not domestic to the US or Canada, you can set those up offshore, and you can move assets in kind if you're international If you're here domestic to the U.S., you have to get creative with that. You can borrow against the asset, fund the policy with cash, buy the assets inside the policy, borrow against the policy, and pay your loan off. It's kind of a roundabout way of doing it. But we have that structure. We can do that for people if they're looking to do so. We also have whole life policies. You can set up an ILET, which is an insurance trust for your grandkids. Kevin O'Leary's got 5 generations worth of life insurance policies that he's structured. All this is very dependent on what your goals are, what the legacy is you want to leave, and what tools are at your disposal in order to be able to accomplish those things. And again, this is just a high level of some of those. Ideally, you would speak with somebody that's a qualified estate planner, somebody that is, a chief architect like Dan Plaskett that works for us to help you design this for you and your family, and then work with an attorney to codify all those things and make sure that you're maintaining those on the backside with the administrative stuff. So, again, we have all those professionals and people at Digital Ascension Group, good partners on our side if you want that information. And if you're international, we have other people globally that we can refer you out to that will help you with these structures as well. So appreciate the super chat, the 589 there, Doug. Hope you and your family are well, and I'm excited to see you tomorrow. We'll be out there in Nashville for the Canary Capital and Beyond Broke Mastermind event. We also have Mangrove. They're sponsoring that. So excited to see over 700 people come together tomorrow from the Mastermind community. That event has been sold out for months, and we're finally here the evening before. Oh, Ray Fuentes. My wife has mentioned Ray Fuentes is going to be there as well. Shout out to Ray. Love you mucho, brother. Hope you're doing good, and excited to see you tomorrow as well. Before I jump to this one, I do want to share this. This was, I talked with Carl, who is our insurance guy. Oh no, I typed the wrong word. If you're interested on the insurance side and you want to learn more about that, you want to have a conversation with somebody, all you got to do is full screen. Here we go. I'm going to share this. You guys can book a call. Again, you don't feel obligated at all. I just wanted to share it with you guys in case you do want to talk to somebody on our side about share screen. There we go. Understand. Man, oh man. Window. Here we go. All right. This is more complicated than I thought it was going to be. There you go. You can scan that QR code and set up a time with our team over there for the insurance. They would love to have a conversation with you. We are going to be proactively reaching out. We have about 2,500 people that we've talked to in the past that are pre-qualified for an insurance policy, and our team over there is going to be reaching out to people. So if you want to be proactive and you don't know if you pre-qualify or not, but you want to set up a time with our team to talk about whole life, IULs, and the like, they would love to talk to you. The other thing I would mention, and I can just speak to what I've done for myself on the insurance side, because again, this kind of goes along with what Doug asked on the estate planning. For me, what I've done right now to be proactive is set up a term policy that I can convert into a whole life policy later on to be able to do the infinite banking and all the fun stuff with. But it gets me coverage in the short term, make sure my family's protected, and it gives me that flexibility later. The other thing that I've done, aside from that, and I would say business owners, this is important for you, you can do split dollar and you get some tax benefits from that type of policy. The other thing that I've done for my son is I've set up an IUL. So I'm a fan of IULs in the right context. If you're selling an IUL to somebody that just retired, I think that's kind of crappy. I don't think that that's the right tool for them at that point in their life. But for children that have a long-term time horizon, they are fantastic tools. So that IUL, I'll fund with a certain amount of money for the next period of time until he's 21 to 25 years old. And at that point, based on the models that were presented to me, that should be worth somewhere around $1 million in cash value. And that's my thing for him. If he wants to come to the family for money, he's got to bring 20% down, and we'll lend it to him at like 1% below prime. And it's got to be for a hard asset, real estate, a business, something like that. It can't be for a startup. If he wants to borrow against that policy to put a down payment on his home, or to start a business, or to do something else, that's his $1 million that he can do whatever with over his lifetime. Trump talks about his dad gave him $1 million loan, and everybody kind of, poo-poos that and say, oh, well, it must be nice. Well, look, we would all love to do that for our kids, right? Like, you want to give your kid a leg up. So that's the way I'm doing it. That's not the end-all, be-all. I'm just talking about the couple policies that I've set up with Carl and our team to make sure that my stuff's structured right. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, if you want to have a conversation with them, again, I'll share the QR code one more time here in case you guys do want to. Okay, well, maybe it's not going to work. Well, you guys got it. You can rewind the video. Oh, here it goes. Sorry. Ha! Full screen. No, it's not going to work. That's okay. Y'all got it before. So again, or you can just go to exurelegacy.com and set up a time there. Are we there yet? What a fitting name, 1986. They say, Big Jake, with the crash and repricing across all markets, do you think there could be a push for lower wages for employees? That's an interesting question. I mean, the minimum wage hasn't been raised, which back in the day, minimum wage was supposed to support a family of 4. Like that, when it originally came out, that was what it was intended for. You can't do that today on minimum wage. You'd have to have like 3 or 4 jobs at minimum wage to even really get by as a couple. So, I do think that there needs to be something that shifts with that, but I don't know that lowering wages is going to be the way that works. I do think that with the advent of AI, you're probably going to get universal income. I know that that's not everybody's favorite topic, but as long as it's not tax dollars that are being used to produce that, and there are other economic means by which that's being generated, I think people would be okay with it, especially if you were able to, have all your survival needs met, house, food, car, cell phone, stuff like that. And if it's less than $150,000 a year is what they're talking about being able to supplement people's income with. So as far as employers, lowering wages, I would think that they would have to compete with that universal basic income to get people to come to their job. So my concern really with the advent of AI is many of the entry-level jobs is where you kind of cut your teeth and you learn how to do stuff, and then later on you gain the skill set to be able to command a higher salary. And you take 10,000 hours and have great expertise in something, and then you're able to then, generate a higher income for yourself. If we remove all of those lower layer jobs and those are all replaced by administrative AI, that doesn't really give the opportunity in the market for people to start in those positions and gain that knowledge over a period of time to then better themselves and have a higher income later. So we're going to move into a completely different paradigm. I don't think that wages are going to come down. I think that they're going to have to be competitive with the UBI in order to be able to incentivize people to work instead of just taking that salary. So that'll be an interesting dynamic that plays out, because I think if you earn over a certain amount, you won't be able to get the UBI, but you'll be earning more than enough to make sure that you're okay and you're able to meet your needs. So we'll have to see. Is the answer. I wish I had. I do have a crystal ball, but it doesn't show me all of the future, just a little bit. And that's not one of the things it showed me. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but those are my thoughts on the subject. We got Kevin, Mr. Teeter. He says, good evening, kind sir. Thank you for all that you do for the community. What kind of price appreciation do you see for XRPN in the first year once the SPAC is complete? Will the treasury be used to stabilize the price of XRP? It's an interesting question. I am excited for Evernorth. I think that they are going to be successful in their endeavors. I think that they're going to be able to seed a lot of the DeFi protocols and help build out a lot of the models and infrastructure to be able to allow corporates and institutions to kind of see what they're doing and model their stuff after that. with G Treasury and Ripple Prime and the products that they're putting together for XRP and RLUSD. But as far as, stabilizing the price of XRP, really the mechanism for the stabilization of the price of XRP is the escrow. Ripple sells onto the market every single month, and that holds price down. People don't like that, which I completely understand, but it funds their business and allows them to continue to build the integrations for the larger adoption of the network and XRP itself. So for them to stabilize the price, I'm not sure by which mechanism they'd be able to do that. They will definitely lock that XRP up and put it to work in different pools and AMMs and other DeFi, as well as other means to be able to generate returns on that XRP that they'll be able to pay out to their investors, or pass back to their investors through a higher valuation on the stock or trading above NAV. I do think that they're going to be successful in that. What price do I think it'll go to? I think it was trading at like $10.60-something last time I looked at it, but that's been a little bit. It could be more or less than that now, not sure. To be candid with you, it's not something that I keep up with on a daily basis. I have direct exposure to XRP, and so I haven't looked at investing in the DATs or the ETFs. What I'll say about the DAT is it depends on your risk tolerance. This is already a risky asset class. I view XRP as again, not financial advice. I think it's a sure bet out of all the things that are out there. I think it's the lowest risk crypto to invest in personally, and that's why my investments are there. But again, you should do your own research. I'm just one guy on the internet. There's a lot of other opinions out there, so take it with a grain of salt. But the XRPN or these DATs are a leveraged play. So if this asset class is already risky, investing in a DAT would be even riskier because it's an escalation, it's derivative. It is basically leverage on the underlying asset that they're taking either through debt or other means to be able to generate outsized returns above and beyond the appreciation on the asset itself. So, if you think XRP is going to do good and you wanted a lever play on XRP and you wanted that in your stock portfolio and you were okay with the risk and the time horizon for that investment, it's probably a really good investment. If you're looking for something short term, you're looking for lower risk threshold, if your investments are not in your stock portfolio, it probably isn't a good fit. So it all of, again, I hate to sound like a lawyer, but it does depend, and you would want to talk with a financial advisor before making the decision to invest in that or not. A lot of people that I know already have made that decision, irrespective of their conversation with a financial advisor. But again, I have no clue on the price point. I do think once they finalize the SPAC, you're going to see some FOMO. I think that people will pile in on top of that, and if there is some additional price appreciation for XRP, obviously that would benefit the share price that it would be trading at, because it trades, ideally above NAV. It could be both directions. It could be below NAV or above NAV. But if they're operating that correctly, then it should be trading above NAV, and you would get a levered play on the appreciation of XRP. Cheryl says, does Ripple/XRP need the Fed master account approval before repricing happens? Well, I want to make a delineation here. Ripple, the company, is not XRP. Many people still call XRP Ripples because that's what it was back in 2013, 2014 before they rebranded to XRP. But XRP is the asset that moves value on the XRPL, which is a decentralized global protocol that moves value that Ripple leverages to build products and solutions for their business. So the master account for Ripple has no correlation to the price of XRP. Now, would Ripple want that master account in place before XRP appreciated? Quite possibly, right? But it doesn't really have a bearing on the appreciation of XRP itself. They are a completely independent organization from the ledger. And that was really, what the judge determined in the lawsuit between Ripple and the SEC. The judge described XRP in and of itself as not a security. The contracts that Ripple made on top of XRP in order to be able to generate returns and do stuff for their business, those were securities, and they were not registered, and they were fined for that $50 million. But they've moved past that at this point, and all of those agreements are grandfathered in, and so we'll see who exercises those options when the time comes. But for the master account in particular, I don't think it has any direct bearing on the appreciation of XRP, but I would say, it would behoove Ripple to have that in place prior to the appreciation happening. We got Mohammed. Good to see you, my dude. He says, hey, Jake, this other gentleman argues reverse carry trade would hurt XRP short term as a speculative asset like July of 2024, since no regulation let central banks use it at scale for liquidity crisis per the BIS FSB 2025 reports. Thoughts on this? Again, I've said this before. I think it will go up in value. I think that they'll drive liquidity into it at the time of liquidity crisis and the reverse carry trade unwind. But it could be volatility the other direction, right? We could see it go down with the rest of the market and then they implement it. But I do believe that it will happen prior to regulatory clarity. You got clarity from FinCEN, you have clarity from the CFTC, you have clarity from the SEC, you have the IMF and many other global bodies that have already talked to Ripple and have written white papers that refer to an exchange rate peg, which they abbreviate as XRP. The BIS has put out a lot of different working papers around distributed ledger technology and the implementation of it. The DTCC has talked about it, NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange or NYSE, London Stock Exchange, and many others. I'm pretty confident that they could go ahead and use it. There just has to be enough liquidity in it for them to be able to start leveraging it for the settlement of those transactions. And it has all the clarity that I'm aware that it needs in order to be able to do that. Now, the Clarity Act itself would allow other cryptocurrencies to operate in that capacity. But until that's in place, XRP is really positioned as the unique option to be able to facilitate all of that because of the latency and the fees associated with it in comparison to Bitcoin and ETH. So that's my 2 cents. Again, I'm not the end-all be-all. I'm just one dude on the internet that comes on here and gives you my opinion. You're doing great listening to multiple people in order to be able to be educated on the topic and have the right conversation and think through it yourself. So take it with a grain of salt, but that's my 2 cents on it. Retired Fire Chief, good to see you, my man. He says, hey, Jake, what are your thoughts on why the remaining XRP spot ETFs haven't been approved yet? I don't think that they haven't been approved yet. I think that they haven't filed. Because as long as they meet the framework for the spot ETFs in the guidelines that the SEC's issued, they would immediately be approved. So they haven't filed their S1 yet. There was a trust company filed for BlackRock in 2023 in Delaware that's no longer on the website. Did they remove that? Is it still sat there in the background? Your guess is as good as mine. But that is what they need to file preliminary before they file the S1. So could they use that vehicle if they wanted to and get something to market very quickly? I think so. But you would see, other ETF issuers issue a trust. They're in Delaware most often before they were to issue the S1 or file the S1 with the SEC to get the ETF approved and for it to begin trading. So what's my thought on the delay? Well, if you were trying to time things for a liquidity crisis and have significant demand all at one time, there might be a coordinated effort to be able to launch those all at the same time, which would be at a later date than when the original ones were put out. The original ones were probably put out, in my opinion, to make sure that they eat the majority of the supply off the market, and what would be left would be on the exchanges, and that volume would have to move to the exchanges in order to be able to push the XRP price higher. So we're currently climbing. People let me know over here on TikTok, which I appreciate. $1.62 for XRP. Hopefully we just continue to trend that direction. God willing. Maybe we'll get a pot of gold tomorrow. That'd be great if we did. Thank you for the super chat. And Mr. Rick Johnson, good to see you, sir. He says, got my LLC established. Awesome. Over 100,000 XRP. I hope your name really isn't Rick Johnson if you're telling people how much XRP you have. Of course, I'm sure there's 1,000 Rick Johnsons, so it's actually a good scapegoat. He says, want to onboard, but have many questions. Can you tell me the best way to speak to someone who is knowledgeable without getting charged for a conversation? Want to talk, not emails. We have a phone number. So this is probably the second time I've ever mentioned this, but if you want to go to the Digital Wealth Partners website, there is a phone number at the bottom that you can call during business hours, and one of our staff will pick up the phone, and they're happy to answer any of the questions that you have. And then, if you want to onboard at that point after they've answered your questions, or if they can't answer them, they'll pass you to somebody who can. I'm pretty confident that they should be able to answer all the preliminary questions that you would have. But they have all those resources at their disposal, and they should be able to help you out. So that would be my suggestion. Just call the number at the bottom of the website. This is feedback that we've gotten from a lot of people. Up until this point, we didn't really have the staff to be able to handle the inbound on the phone calls. But here in the last week, we've launched that. So continue to listen to the clients and make sure that they have the avenues to communicate with us as they would prefer. And that is something that we've released here recently. So look forward to talking to you. Hopefully our team can answer the questions. And if they can't, you know where to find me. Nick, my man, he says, Jake, hi, last year on your live, you said about $25 XRP soon after ETFs go live. Why hasn't it? And have you seen Curve ETF potential? Thanks. So, circling back to that conversation, that was a conversation that I had with Paul Barron. And we were speculating on what we would see for price appreciation if it was just the ETFs. That was his language to me. He kind of, I don't want to say backed me in a corner, but asked me specifically, without the reverse carry trade and all of these other catalysts, what I thought the price could get to just off of ETF volume alone. And that did include the BlackRock ETF, by the way. I did stipulate that on the podcast, which we still have not seen and is on my bingo card. So, really the reason that we haven't seen the appreciation on XRP like many of us had hoped for through the ETF volume, one, the volume has dwindled over the past week or two. We finally got some volume today. I think we had 20 million in volume. It actually ended up being inflows into XRP, and you're seeing that reflected in the price now. The reason that we haven't seen that up to this point is the majority of trades for the ETFs and the aggregation of that XRP to back those ETFs has been through OTC desk and dark pools. OTC desk and dark pools happen off market. Those trades do not register on the exchange. They're not volume. And so because they're able to do that, and there's enough supply, on the OTC desk and the dark pools, they haven't had to move that volume to the exchanges yet. But I do believe, since Ripple did not sell their XRP onto the open market this month, that liquidity for the OTC desk and dark pools has dried up, and you're starting to see that volume make its way over to the exchanges for the aggregation of that XRP now. So if we saw a liquidity crisis, if we saw BlackRock step in with their ETF, and a bunch of FOMO and exchanges go liquid because Tether had some issues, that's when you're going to see XRP at a much, much higher price than just 25 bucks. And again, like I said earlier, I don't think you're going to see a double-digit XRP. I think it's either going to hang out where it is, or we're going to see it fly past that in a very short period of time, as we do see the chart gap up because of the thin order books that exist on the exchanges. And then as far as the Curve ETF, I'm not sure if that is an income-producing ETF or not, but I think it is. I think that there's going to be a lot more of those with XRP in particular. I think that people are looking to generate some type of dividend or yield on their investment through XRP, and whether that's through an ETF or the asset itself, I think that that'll be appealing, and a lot of people will want to participate in that type of ETF if that's the type of ETF that it is. So if I'm mistaken, disregard that. But that is just without context and me looking at it viscerally, my response. B Mark, my man, he says, Mr. Jake, does real world tokenization lock up XRP, or is that like a liquid thing? I don't get it. Explain simple, please. How do I make this an analogy that's easily understandable? I actually just shot a video that talks about this, but it hasn't been released yet. So real world asset tokenization does not lock up XRP by itself. Liquidity pools that have XRP and that issued asset in it that arbitrage and trade could. AMMs that have XRP versus whatever that real world asset is also could lock up XRP. So there is tangential benefit to the issuance of real world tokenized assets on the XRPL, but the issuance of those themselves do not explicitly restrict the supply of XRP. It's kind of a downstream effect of that. And then XRP itself is super liquid unless it's being held and not used. So the ETFs holding XRP, liquidity pools holding XRP, AMMs holding XRP, DeFi locking up XRP to be able to reflect that value somewhere else, Hidden Road using XRP as collateral and locking it up and reflecting that value off balance sheet somewhere else. All those things that are going to lock up XRP, remove that from the circulating supply or the ability for it to be able to transact value openly on the network. And that's what causes the supply shock where XRP is going to have to be a significantly higher price in order to facilitate the volume that I believe is going to move over the network. So I don't know if that was too complicated or maybe a little bit higher level, but it really comes down to supply and demand. Real world tokenization benefits XRP tangentially because of the other DeFi protocols and things on the network which will lock up XRP with those, but that themselves is the issuance of real world assets on chain by itself does not lock up XRP. Roughnet says, I appreciate your punctuality. I'm trying to be on time, you know. DAG needs to work on that. I had a consult with one of them and they were 11 minutes late that I paid for. Not the best look. I appreciate the feedback, my man. I will say this, it's not an excuse. We do need to be punctual, and I will remind my team of that. Hopefully they did apologize and extend the meeting for you. That's what I tend to do with people. And then the issue there is, like, I run late all day long and I'm telling my assistant that I'm going to be 5 or 10 minutes late to every single meeting because oftentimes they're back to back. I'll take that back to my team and tell them that they need to start including some buffers, 5 or 10 minute buffers in between meetings, just to make sure that they can be punctual, and that if they do need to get up and go to the bathroom or their conversation runs long or whatever happens, that doesn't impact the next call. So again, appreciate your patience and your grace on that. I will remind our team the standards that we have for them, and hopefully that doesn't happen again. Well, let me say it this way. I'm actually just the chairman now, so I'm not the CEO. I don't have direct control over what the employees do. I can make strong suggestions to the CEO, and then Aaron Freeze can then go take that to the rest of the group. So that's what I will do. I will talk to Aaron about that, make sure that there's something monitoring those things, and we take that feedback and we're able to get better. So Samuel, Mr. Boyd, he says, Jake, if I'm not mistaken, in your last interview with Mike with Ripple Prime, he suggested Ripple Prime and DWP are partners. Am I crazy? Please confirm. No comment. I don't know if that answers your question or not. It probably should, but I'm going to defer my comment for a later time on that conversation. But I'm glad you picked up on that. Rick Johnson, good to see you, man. He says, Royd Man. He's always getting me with the nicknames. He says, last week you missed 2 of my super chats. After the live ended, another guy was bummed that you missed the super chat too. I hope no censorship. I try to answer all of them. If I miss them, it's not on purpose. A lot of the time when I get to about this time, I get about an hour in, I tell people to stop the super chats. I normally go to the bottom of the chat and then I'll work my way back up. And if I miss one on the way back up, that's my fault. I actually have 2 right here that I'm supposed to read. My wife normally runs in and reminds me, and she didn't do it, so I'm going to get to these now. because I'm sure that there are some people that are upset that I missed their super chat last time. So again, appreciate your super chat, appreciate your support, and sorry I missed them last time, but I am going to get to these. So we got Diego. He says, one, considering XRP is part of the global agenda, wouldn't they take specific care, if you know what I know, you know what I mean, of the US XRP holders when the waters are quiet later on after the events? You know, so this kind of goes back to the snapshot that was taken by Flare on December 12th of 2020. And then the lawsuit got dropped 9 days later on the winter solstice. Why would you take a snapshot of the network right then? There was only 2.7 million wallets at the time. And Flare can say it was for, you know, the distribution of their token. I get that. There's been other things, but I've never seen any other time where they've taken a snapshot. They've always just distributed the token to whatever wallets were held. So that's always caused me some pause. I think that that'll come back around later. I think that there may be some reparations paid to those that were holding XRP when that lawsuit was filed through some measure or means later on. Actually worked with, you know, Jimmy Valley on the valuation paper that they put together back in the day. And that was the whole premise behind that, was what are the actual damages to the people that were holding XRP during that period of time, because it pushed out the adoption of XRP significantly in comparison to where it would have been. That lawsuit set Ripple back 5 years in their ability to operate here in the US. So will there be something that benefits those that were holding XRP during that period? I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I'm just, again, giving you guys facts. There was a snapshot taken 9 days before the lawsuit was filed. I've not seen any other situation where that took place. So just interesting timing on that snapshot. Number two, being that DWP is the only retail-focused company, wouldn't that make us an easy target for them wiping out all of us by wiping out you? So we're a three-legged stool, and maybe I haven't explained this well enough in the past. Your accounts with DWP are at Anchorage. So Anchorage provides the institutional custodian and the segregated accounts. These are FBO accounts. They're in your name, not our name. They are sub-accounts under our account, but you own the assets in those accounts. Even if we went bankrupt or went out of business, you could move your account at Anchorage to another RIA. That's the whole deal, right? So there's three legs to the stool. If Anchorage gets knocked out, their bankruptcy remote, another trust bank steps in after a period of time. If you want to take your assets to another RIA and they have an account at Anchorage, you can move over there. If something were to happen to us, and God forbid something happens to you, your beneficiaries or your spouse are on the account to make sure that there's continuity and transfer of those assets and they're not liquidated like they would be on an exchange. So I think you're being... Maybe I'm wrong. Like, look, maybe there's something I don't see. I'm not saying I'm the end-all be-all and I see, but we've done everything that we can to mitigate that risk of somebody coming in and like taking us out. I don't know exactly what you mean by that. And then the last question, have you ever thought about all this? I don't believe you're an insider or have bad intentions. I've been blessed enough to be in certain rooms and have conversations with people, but I wouldn't say I'm an insider. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to play out. I just have had enough conversations to kind of see the pieces on the chessboard, or the dominoes, if you will, and kind of what order they're going to fall in. And definitely don't have bad intentions. I literally have built this selfishly to make sure that everybody else has access to the same stuff that I wanted. So people... Obviously, we charge money. We're a business. We have to make enough money to be able to pay our employees and scale and do all the things that we want to do. But similar to Ripple, over the long term, that's only going to be beneficial for all the XRP holders. Us doing this pushes all of these things forward, irrespective of other counterparties. So the other banks and institutions are at least 12 months away from offering the same stuff that we've been able to build over the past 2 years. And I can say that with confidence because I know what it took to build what we have built, and we have a lot of internal IP that streamlines these systems that other people don't have. So definitely, we want to make sure that people that are holding large amounts of XRP when it appreciates, or other digital assets for that matter, have the ability to earn income off of it. They have the ability to make sure it's safe and structured. They have the ability to mitigate taxes, and they have lines of credit against it so that they don't have to sell if they don't want to. And that's really all it comes down to. So I appreciate the questions. I really didn't take it as accusatory. I think that they're good questions and they're fair questions, and hopefully those are good enough answers. To Diego again. We also have BT, aka Nana. She says, hey Jake and the Tea Lady, hope you and your family are well. Thank you, ma'am. Hope you're doing well too. She says, thank you and your team for all that you do for us. We're blessed. So what can you tell us about the BlackRock rumors of bankruptcy? Black Swan or fake? BlackRock's not going bankrupt. They're systemically important. Let's play that out for a second here. Let's play out BlackRock goes bankrupt, okay? They would have to start liquidating assets in order to, restructure. It depends on what type of bankruptcy they would have to file, right? Whether that's Chapter 11, 13, 7, whichever one it is. If it's just reorganization, Chapter 11, then they're still going to have to liquidate assets in order to be able to raise enough cash to be able to restructure their debts. They currently prop up the stock market. Like, BlackRock owns almost every single stock and every single index in a meaningful way. So if they've got to start liquidating those positions, it's going to cause significant selling pressure on the stock market, and then other people are going to be de-risking, and it's going to be a negative spiral. And the U.S. government knows this. I would say, again, this is just my personal opinion, that BlackRock is a proxy for the U.S. government. The Chinese government can buy stocks directly, and they do so, and they prop up their own economy because they can print the money to do that. We can't do that here in the U.S. The Fed cannot buy stocks directly. So if you needed somebody to kind of do that on your behalf and restructure the debt and make sure that, everything was going to be okay and figure out our way out of this mess, I think that's what BlackRock is and does. I think that they've helped restructure the debt after the GFC since 2008, and you happen to see Bitcoin launched in 2009. That was, to save the people from, the banks and institutions and be sovereign and all this stuff. What a wonderful narrative to get the freedom fighters and other people to adopt that. And also, be a huge marketing play and get adoption of this asset class, keep people away from gold, and investing in something else besides gold, and not triggering the alarms earlier on the collapse of things. I think there was a lot of motivation in the reason that they've rolled this asset class out, and I think that they've had the intention to, tokenize everything and move everything on chain for the whole time, to be honest with you. And I think BlackRock's at the epicenter of that. So for them to go bankrupt, I think it's highly unlikely. I don't think that that's going to be the scenario that plays out. But I do think that they are going to be instrumental in the transition into this new paradigm that we're about to have for the financial system. All right. So those two are out of the way. We'll go ahead and jump to the next super chat. And again, sorry if I missed your super chats. We're about an hour in here. If you want to go ahead and cut the super chats out, I'm probably going to go to the bottom of the chat after this one, and then I'm going to work my way back up, and we'll try to get to all of them. And if I miss them again, just send us to us over there at info@digitalfamilyoffice or info@beyondbroke, and they will get passed to me, and I will read them on the Wednesday live. All right. Wayne, what's up, my man? He says, I'm in line, 20th place for the Nashville event. It's 1 hour away from my home. Please send me 2 tickets, big dog. Are the oil reserves are very small in comparison to what they need? Maybe a week worth of relief. Yeah, I mean, if it continues to persist, and it's not like they can pipe a ton of it out, it's only about 10% of the volume that they can even supply. They're in Japan off of what their actual needs are, so they're going to continue to face the inflation whether they roll these reserves out or not. They're going to start on Thursday. They're saying they got 240 days worth. I don't think that's the case, but maybe I'm wrong. And I would love to give you 2 tickets. Unfortunately, unless other people drop out, we are at, like, literally the fire marshal could get called tomorrow because of the amount of people that we're going to have in one place. So if I could, Wayne, I would love to. But unfortunately, I don't have the pull in order to be able to do that. Now, if you show up, and we're not at capacity and you do have a ticket, we might be able to work something out. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that come tomorrow. There's already people. I know that a lot of our moderators are already in town. They're at the bar tonight hanging out. Shout out to them, the moderators for the mastermind. I want to touch on that for a second. I do not publicly thank them enough for all that they do there in the group. I try to do it on the calls each week, but the amount of time and effort that they put into that community is mind-blowing. And I just want to say publicly that I really do appreciate all the moderators that we have there in the mastermind. They put in a ton of hours, they help a ton of people, and we're really blessed to have them. So thank you guys for all that you do. We've got Dinivri, butchered that. This is from Israel. Okay, that's why I can't say it, and I apologize for butchering it. He says, is there any good product for XRP here? Oh, in Israel. I mean, we can work with people from Israel directly as an individual, or if you have your asset structured in a corporation, they're in Israel or another jurisdiction. So, you know, we would be able to democratize access to the products that we have. You are international, so you're not under the guidelines of the U.S. or the securities laws here. I will say Doppler Finance, Midas, and Flare Networks all have DeFi. There are risks with those things, but we've met with all of their teams. I know Bob personally, who's on the institutional side over there at Axelar, that orchestrated that with Midas. That's awesome. They have geofenced the U.S. You can participate in that product. I don't know what the tax implications are in your jurisdiction, but when you mint a new asset here, you do realize the taxes, either long-term or short-term capital gains, depends on when you bought that XRP. So I would get with a CPA before you participate in one of those ecosystems and just verify that if you get a wrapped asset in exchange for your XRP, that it's not a tax implication. Doppler does something similar. You put it into their pool, they pay you, 3 to 5% type thing. It's a daily deal. That's the annual rate. They just, amortize that to a daily payout that's paid out to the people participating in their DeFi. And then again, Flare Networks has some other compelling things as well. And I know that they're working to mitigate the risks associated with their infrastructure through Fireblocks and Zaman. So there are definitely things out there. I would just, do a lot of research, make sure you understand the risks in participating in those things, make sure you understand the tax implications for however you're structured in whatever jurisdiction you're in. And then, or you can participate with us, right? The other thing I would say about us is, because you're international, there's probably going to be a 30% withholding tax. We were working on setting up an offshore feeder in Cayman to be able to facilitate that for international clients so that they're not dealing with those tax implications. We're also looking at setting up shop there in Dubai later this year. So, all that being said, I think you're going to have a lot of options. You have some now, and I think there'll be a lot more in the near future. Cole, he said, Mr. Trickle, 589. I don't know if your last name is Mr. Trickle, but that's cool if it is. He says, hey, Jake, do you think nearly everyone who is anyone that studied XRP predicted $5 to $20 on ETFs alone? How did everyone miss the mark in your opinion? God bless. Thank you to you and yours. Appreciate that, man. Thank you for this $5.89. The $10 super chat. I think we underestimated the fact that they could buy so much XRP through the OTC desk and dark pools. I think we thought that a lot of that volume would move through the exchanges, and it just didn't. And because of that, we haven't seen the appreciation on the asset. I think we're going to. And I would say this too, if you really did want to use this asset at scale for the purpose it's meant for, in my opinion, $25 ain't going to cut it. $5, $20, it's not going to cut it. And I think most people that are going to ride for those prices are probably going to ride for the higher ones. I could be wrong about that. I know people that are looking to sell at $5, $8, $10, $12, $15, and they have a plan for that money, which is great. But I think the majority of people that are holding this asset understand where it's headed and why, and would likely not sell at those valuations. So because of that, the order books are thin, and that's why I think you're going to see price gap up much higher than that. And then once there's enough liquidity in the asset, they can start using it. And I think that's their whole prerogative. I think they want to drive enough liquidity into it. And if it was a slow, gradual climb, I don't think it would get to the prices they need it to be to actually facilitate the transactions. So that's my 2 cents. Again, just like everybody else, I thought ETF volume alone would drive the price some. But them selling onto the open market and exchanges and buying off the OTC desk and dark pools wasn't something that I had anticipated, and I think many others missed as well. Haro says, hey Jake, what's up, dude? Being from Texas, I'd like your opinion, thoughts on the proposal, Epic City, supposedly coming to Texas. Thanks, Jake, appreciate you. I have never even heard of this, so we're going to give it a Google, man. Epic City, Texas, sure enough. Oh, it's actually in North Dallas. It's interesting. It says a master planned Islamic community centered residential development project in Texas, situated approximately 40 miles from Dallas near the town of Josephine. The initiative spans 402 acres across unincorporated portions of Collin and Hunt counties and was initiated by East Plano Islamic Center. I'd have to understand more, but look, I know everybody has their opinions on Israel and people that participate in that religion. I'm about freedom, right? Like, I don't have a problem with anybody deciding what religion they want to pursue. That's the whole premise behind being here in the U.S. As long as it doesn't impede my happiness or my freedoms or my opportunity, cool. Do whatever you want. Don't, shill it to my kids or try to influence my life in some capacity. But outside of that circumstance, like, if you love balloons and you want to go lick balloons, cool. If you want to pray to a different God, if you want to do whatever, I don't care. I have no issue with that. So if they want to set up a whole community and have, an ecclesiastic deal going on there, again, as long as it doesn't affect me or my family and, impose things on us, they do what they want. So if it helps, them continue to establish their religion and pursue their happiness, I'm good with it. I'm not. Again, I'm pretty down the center. You could maybe even, like Max Savory, my business partner, says I actually lean a little bit left. I don't think so. I think I lean a little bit right on things, but I'm pretty down the middle. I'm really just about, your rights as a citizen in the U.S., Bill of Rights that you get, and the pursuit of happiness. So as long as those things are okay, then we're cool. And I do think that we're probably going to move, I don't know how you guys feel about this or not, and I try not to get into political stuff, but, we weren't founded as a democracy, we were founded as a republic, and as a republic, the states themselves governed a lot of the things and laws for those that participated in those states or resided in those states, and I'm starting to see the shift move back toward that. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? You make your own opinions on that. I prefer a republic, a smaller federal government, and more state-driven legislation, but that's just me. So we'll have to see how things play out here. We got G Thord. They say, thanks for getting to my question last week. He's big on the abbreviations. I know it limits your characters on this, so I appreciate you trying to get everything in. He says, NOV nieces and nephews. Not sure what NOV means. Again, I'm probably ignorant on that. He says, how would LLC protection work with the trusts? Can we move assets back and forth once in trust? AUM fees for 5, 10, 20 million things. How would LLC protection work with trust? So there's a couple different types of trust. We help people set up both kinds, irrevocable or revocable. A revocable trust doesn't have an EIN. It's a pass-through entity. It just provides you probate protection and allows continuity without, public reporting of your assets when you pass away. The LLC and its interest in its assets can be assigned to a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust. You don't get any creditor protection from a revocable trust. You would get creditor protection from an irrevocable trust because you're going to have a distribution trustee and you're going to have a trust protector and you're going to be the grantor. You wouldn't be the beneficiary of that either. With a revocable trust, you can be all three. You can be the trustee, the grantor, and the beneficiary, and that's why it's passed through. So I would work with an estate planner to figure that out for your situation, for your nieces and nephews. Once the stuff is in there, you can still move things around. You just can't move things outside the trust if you've completed the gift. So there's 3 different components or benefits that you would get to an irrevocable trust. You have probate protection, which same thing as the revocable trust. You have creditor protection, which takes about 2 years to season in on an irrevocable trust. And you can gift the assets or complete the gift out of your taxable estate. But you don't have to do that one. You can leave it in your taxable estate or you can gift it out. Here in the U.S., you only get $30 million between you and your spouse, $15 million apiece in 2026 that you can gift out of your taxable estate. If we continue to have a Republican president, I think that will probably continue to escalate over the coming years until there's a regime change. And, maybe if Biden had won, he was going to drop it back to like $5 million was going to be the total. So, that's where the 40% estate tax comes in. Again, I would have a conversation with an estate planner or tax attorney to better structure that and make sure you're doing it best for your nieces and nephews. On the AUM fees, anything below 5 million is 2%. Anything above 5 million to 10 million drops to 50 basis points. Anything over $10 million drops to 40 basis points. And if you're hundreds of millions or billions, then we're happy to negotiate on the AUM fee. So, we have hard costs for all of that stuff. We do make a little margin there. It's not much. And it's enough to pay our advisors and provide the services that we do. I was on a call earlier, and to be honest with you guys, we haven't made a whole lot of money. We charge fair prices for everything that we do, actually below market on a lot of stuff. And this is a long-term play for us. Anytime that the company's made more money, we've rolled it back in and hired more people, built more systems, built software in order to be able to scale and meet demand and, create enterprise value, and then also make sure that we have everything in place when the demand skyrockets for price appreciation or when we launch the yield product. So anyway, all that being said, I think we charge very fair prices for the services that we provide. And custody is probably going to be a race to the bottom over the long term. You've already seen Schwab and some of the other ones go to zero on their custody costs, and they charge on products that you're participating in. We will get there at some point in the future, I have no doubt. But as it sits today, we want to make sure that our incentives are aligned with the clients, and charging fees on, the assets continuing to grow in value versus trading fees. If we believe in the long-term appreciation of the asset, and most of our clients do too. And so that way we have aligned incentives. If we were trading, we're only 20 bips on trading fees. We won't make anything on trading fees. So, and it's no spread either. So a lot of the exchanges will charge, they have a spread of 1 or 2% and they're charging a fee on top of that. We don't do that. It's just 20 basis points at whatever the actual market rate is for the asset. So, even if you held all of your assets with us and you made one trade to sell them all, and it was less than $5 million, you'd pay 2% plus 20 bips, so 2.2% over the year. Almost any other exchange is going to charge you more than that. Almost any other broker is going to charge you more than that, just to sell the assets at the end of it anyway. So again, I think that our business model and our fees are very well aligned with clients' incentives and where we see the market going. And I think that's also why we've had the success that we have. I am going to go ahead and go to the bottom of the chat, and then we're going to work our way back up after this one. John Slack, not 589, but 5689, he says, what do you make of the William Shatner, X-Money 589 BG 123 connection recently discovered? I have my tinfoil hat ready. You know, Shatner's been around for a while. Shatner's actually been around all the way back to 2019. And there was some interesting statements that he made back in 2019 that also kind of related to Bearable Guy and some of the other riddles in the XRP community. So if you want to go back and do some research, which some people have already dug that stuff up, he's also, the captain there on Star Trek. Interesting. The purple rocket ship and all of that, also very interesting. If you were going to time it, it's really good timing. Again, there's been a lot of things that point to, I don't know if I want to go down this rabbit hole. I probably shouldn't. I'll do it in the mastermind. I'll talk about this rabbit hole. I'll circle back to this conversation, but I'll keep it professional here in public. Rockin' HL, he says, will horses be cheaper after all this plays out? Asking for you for the tea lady. Just an appreciation super chat. Appreciate the humble effort. Thank you, man. Thank you for the kind words. And so this is an interesting paradigm shift for a lot of people. Most people think about the money that they're spending and the time or effort that's required for them to make that money. So if you make $20 an hour, $40 an hour, $50 an hour, when you go to spend that amount of money, you correlate that to 1 hour of your time. On the other side of price appreciation, that paradigm's going to have to shift substantially. I would look at things as percentage of your net worth. That's what I've seen a lot of people that are extremely wealthy look at things as. So let's say when you purchase a vehicle, right? If you are worth, call it $1 million, and you go out and you buy the top of the line F-250, 100 grand, it's 10% of your total net worth that you're spending on a truck. And if you're worth less than that, then it's actually a much larger portion of your net worth that you're spending on a vehicle, and financing it. Same thing for your home. Many people aren't even worth what they purchased for a home, right? Like they're hoping to build equity in that house to increase their net worth, which I don't view a home as an asset. We've talked about that plenty of times, but it can be an investment, if that's where you choose to invest your money. I think there's a lot of other better investments than your home itself. But what I would say to that end is, again, looking at it as a percentage of your net worth, back to the horses. If XRP goes to the moon and we have, just as an arbitrary number, $50 million, and a horse costs, a nice horse is $50,000. Nice horse. That is that 1%? My wife left me the calculator, so I'm going to use it here. We got 50,000, nice horse, $50,000, divided by $50 million. That's 0.001%. Kind of like a penny, less than a penny out of $100. Yeah, so if you look at it that way, horses they're not going to get nominally cheaper, but as a percentage of what we would normally spend, yeah, they would be substantially cheaper. And I think people that look through look at vehicles or homes or other assets that you probably want on the other side of price appreciation. That would be the lens that I would look at things through. If something becomes more than 1% of your total net worth, a single item, that's probably where I would pause and look at it and go, really, do I really need this? I'd give it 24 hours and then circle back on it. But if something's less than 1% of your total net worth and it's meaningful to somebody in your life or will bring you some happiness, have at it, I think. Now, don't let that get out of control and start spending, 5, 10, 20% of your total net worth on a bunch of these things that I think you'll quickly find won't provide you the level of happiness that you're hoping that they do. Material things are very nice to have. There are comforts that matter. I will say here in Texas, you need air conditioning in your vehicle. My wife and I, for many years, drove beaters that did not have air conditioning when we were younger, and that's not great, especially in certain circumstances. There are a certain level of things that if you have the disposable income, they are nice to have. So all that being said, if on the other side of price appreciation, when you guys go to buy stuff, if that asset is, your home, so like a DTI, when you go to finance your home, they make sure it's not the payment's not going to be more than 30% of your income. That's really high, in my opinion. Again, you ideally, like the millionaires that I know and the people that have been extremely successful, they live on about 30% of their income. And the rest of that is then disposable, and they can then, invest that and continue to grow their wealth. So if you can kind of think about that metric, like we talk about, financially free, in my opinion, is you make twice as much as your expenses every single month from passive income. Now, there may be active income on top of that. But realistically, if you really wanted to grow your wealth at a more aggressive rate and make sure that you weren't going to be poor again, living below your means and living on about 30% of whatever you're making, probably a really good rule. If you guys have ever listened to he's a motivational speaker. He's one of the best motivational speakers I've ever heard, and at one point was the best in the world. Sports teams, many other people have had him come and talk, and that's one of the talks that he gives is, all the wealthy people that he had met that had helped him out live on 30% or less of their total income. And that's why they're millionaires. And so he just started copying what they do, and he was able to become a millionaire himself. I was going to go to the bottom and work my way back up. Chris, you got in at the last second, my man. Chris from Down Under, F1P. He says, hey, legend, with BG123 post from Xmas, Christmas, and the 589 on the floor in stone on the moon, seems like they're trying to tell us something. Hopefully. Price appreciation blast past 100. Wink. God bless, mate. All right, we'll get into the riddles a little bit. We'll give you some tinfoil hat. If you go back to the old riddles, some of the first ones, there was a rug. There's a Persian rug on the floor. The Persian New Year is 320. It's right at the spring equinox is actually when they have New Year's. All of the BG riddles have been around Christmas. 1224, 1223 is when he's listed those pictures or posted those. Same thing on Reddit. And if that was supposed to, it was a reoccurring theme in multiple riddles for them to have a Persian rug underneath there. Interesting to me that their New Year's is actually the spring equinox. That happens this week. Does that mean anything? I don't know. Okay? I wish there was a definitive answer on that. These are all things that I've been here for 5-6 years at this point. I've seen all this. I've watched all those things go by. I have tried to solve it. I think it's a pig pen cipher. I think that you have to follow multiple accounts and correlate things across multiple accounts in order to be able to decipher what they're actually talking about. If you look on the bookshelf in the background in one of the first Christmas riddles, the only book that's an actual book on the bookshelf that's legible that you can read is Wealth of Nations. Wealth of Nations came out March 9th of 1776. Maybe March is the month. The first BG riddle was posted on 3/22. And if you click into that and you look at the hash, that transaction that it shows happened on 3/15. Nothing happened in the last couple days. So I have no idea. I wish I could decipher that stuff. I wish I knew more. But they're interesting. I will say, you know, if you follow Not Financial Advice over there on Twitter and on YouTube, he does great. He finds all kinds of stuff. I've met him in person a couple times. Shout out to him. If you don't follow his channel, you should, especially if you're into the riddles. He gets in. He does the deep dive on that stuff. But again, that's all icing on the cake for me, to be honest with you. Like the underlying fundamentals of the asset, the network, Ripple, R3, SBI, all the things. See, the N says, when XRP hits $100, I'm buying you a watch, good sir. I will take it. I would appreciate that. I'm actually, so my wife has talked about this a couple times, and I got to buy her a horse first. But maybe some horses, not just one horse. Apparently the perfect number of horses is 5 horses, if you guys didn't know. So I'll explain to you the 5 horses that you should have if you are an equestrian. You should have your main horse that you ride on a regular basis, that does, you know, whatever you're trying to do, whether that's dressage or cutting or working cow horse or mounted shooting or, you know, equestrian drill team like my wife, or barrel racing if you're one of the ladies out there. And then you need a backup horse in case that horse gets hurt, because inevitably that horse is going to cast its foot or do something to founder or have a problem. So you should absolutely have a backup horse. So those are 2 horses. You also need a mare that's going to foal, you know, because you need a new horse every couple years, and you want to raise that horse and break it and do all the fun stuff with the baby horse. So you need a mare that's going to be pregnant and foal, and you're going to get the baby, you know, and that's going to be on the mama for a while. And you got your horse that you're riding and their backup horse. So that's 4 horses. And then for the baby, you need an old horse. There's going to be an old horse in the pasture that shows the baby horse what to do and like treats it in a way that, you know, makes it grow up and mature around other horses. It can't just be a spoilt little horse. My wife says the baby doesn't count. The baby definitely counts. It definitely counts in the 5. So, and I don't think, you know, I don't necessarily want a stud horse. But if you know, if you're into that thing, and there is a lot of money in stud horses. I will just say that. There's some, you know, stuff going on right now where they're trying to limit the number of years that you can use frozen semen, which is interesting. But I digress. So that's why you need 5 horses if you're an equestrian. But back to the watches. Once we get to the 5 horses, I definitely want to get into the watch game. I'm looking at APs. I'm looking at Pateks. I'm not into the Richard Mille. That's a little too flashy for me. I'm not trying to draw that type of attention, but you know, a nice watch that people that collect watches would notice. It doesn't have to be flashy. Doesn't need to be gold or diamonds or any of that stuff. But if it's, you know, a minute repeater or something that has, you know, a bunch of functionality in it like many of the APs do, I think that would be cool. And for me, it's not a status thing. It's more to start conversations with the right people, people that, you know, are into watches or into artwork or into high-end cars. They tend to be affluent, well-connected, and oftentimes are pretty intellectual. So that's the reason for me. Wear it out in public, meet cool people, but not so flashy that I'm going to draw attention from the wrong type of person. David, Mr. Valentine, he says, LLC all set up with DWP. Awesome, dude. Mercury account set up and pre-funded. Made great use of the OTC desk. Awesome, dude. I am more than grateful for you and your financial advisor, Sebastian. Everything has been on point, well done. Y'all are my secret weapon. Thank you, dude. Thank you so much for the super chat and the kind words, and I will pass on the flowers to Sebastian. We get a lot of compliments about Sebastian. Sebastian is a young man. He's in his early 20s and has amassed a very large client book over here at DWP. He's only been licensed for, I guess it's been a couple years now. But I get nothing but kudos for him. So I will pass that along, and I appreciate the kind words, and we're excited to be working with you, and glad you're being proactive before price moves. If you guys, I haven't mentioned this, but if you do want the LLC, we would love to work with you on that, to be able to manage your digital assets, do all the things we talked about earlier. If you want us to do that, you just go to our website, digitalfamilyoffice.io, and use the code 50OFF, 50OFFDAG-LLC. That's 50OFFDAG-LLC. Get you everything end-to-end for your LLC to manage your digital assets, creditor protection, anonymity, the ability to mitigate taxes, EIN, articles of organization, certificate of good standing, banking memorandum, template for the operating agreement, and the corporate veil service that we provide as well. James says, "G'day, Jake, legend." What's up, dude? JPY holding oil reserves approximately 200 days. How will this cause inflation in their economy in the near term, or is the conflict an excuse for the BOJ to raise interest rates and start the reverse carry trade? So a couple things there. I do think that it's going to be their scapegoat that allows them to point the finger and say it wasn't us, it was that, that caused us to have to do this. I do think that that's going to be the case. And then separately of that, the 200 days or 240 days is what they say they have in reserves. They can only pipe about 10% of what their economy needs out of those reserves on a daily basis. So even though they have those, they're really not deployable at scale in order to be able to meet the demand across their economy. And for that reason, they're still going to continue to feel the effects of the inflation. That's why you haven't seen oil come plummeting back down, priced in yen. We're still hanging out about 1,500 yen per barrel, which is more than enough for them to feel the substantial amount of inflation. You've already seen that reflected in the yen versus the USD. And I think that they're going to get backed into a corner where the only option that they have left is to raise interest rates, and they are going to blame the conflict in the Middle East for having to do so. And that could very well be this week. I mean, we have one of their meetings just about 24 hours from now on Wednesday. I do think that they will see, I don't know if they'll come out and raise rates or not at that meeting. They've never had an emergency meeting for the Bank of Japan, and they've never raised interest rates that was not at one of their regular scheduled meetings. The market doesn't anticipate them to raise interest rates because they said that they're going to do that in June and July this year. So if they went ahead and did it, it would definitely catch the market off guard, and it's not priced in. Oh, back to the watch. Again, appreciate you, sir. Nope, we already did that one. Sorry, sometimes it kicks me back down in the chat. Very good. Sorry, getting through these. I'm going to find another super chat here. I want to make sure that anybody that pays money, we get those answered. You guys did good. About an hour in, y'all stopped with the super chats, except for Danny. What's going on, Danny? He says, Danny G, you mentioned Art B, maybe Arthur Brito might be a time traveler, what makes you think that? And have you met anyone who you believe is a traveler that gave you some info? Hold your breath if they did. I don't think I've met any time travelers. Again, I just pieced this together off of people that were smarter than me. This wasn't given to me directly, the stuff that I've put out. So the Arthur Brito deal. If the account that I think is Arthur Brito is Arthur Brito, there's been so one of the posts was made on 8/30. of 2 years prior to digital identity going live on the XRPL, and it went live exactly on 8/30 when XLS 40 was passed, which was interesting. Then that same account also said that XRP's price appreciation would happen after the Queen's death, and they said that 2 years before the Queen died. Just a lot of different things in that account on some of the posts and comments that were made that maybe you could have guessed, maybe you would have known, but that many of them, when I look at it, it's hard for me to believe that that this wasn't orchestrated at a very high level and people were aware of it, or that Arthur or somebody else close to him had seen the future somehow and then were able to relay that back. Again, time traveler, I don't know. Is it Project Looking Glass? Also possible. I think those things are real. I don't understand them. I don't pretend to. But I think that there's stuff out there that a lot of people don't understand. So hopefully we get to figure that out. But that's my reasoning behind it. And again, crazy guy on the internet. So take it with a grain of salt. Henry Ramirez, he says, Jake, greetings. If I paid the onboarding fee for DAG, do I have access to financial advisor without extra fees? And does Ryan Archuleta I'm not sure how to say that last name, sound legit. I don't know who Ryan is. So I'm going to defer that one. I'm not sure. I don't have enough information to be able to give you, my opinion on that. But as far as paying the onboarding fee, you absolutely have access to an advisor after you pay the onboarding fee. You will get designated an advisor. Even if you don't fund your account for whatever period of time, you will have an advisor that you can speak to about your finances and structuring things for your digital assets. Cody Alvarez, he says, appreciate your knowledge with the new asset class like this, Jake. Do you think that when the reverse carry trade happens, it will be hard to get money off of the exchanges? Appreciate the content. I do. I do think that it's going to be difficult to really move anything. Like I talked about earlier at the beginning of this, I think we're right on the precipice of a credit event. And that credit event could happen without the reverse carry trade, but it could also happen because of the reverse carry trade. I think that's where we're headed irrespective. I think there's going to be a liquidity crisis, and that's what XRP was made to fix. But as far as the exchanges go, I do think that they're going to have liquidity issues, and that's why there's going to be a large demand for XRP. I don't think it'll be traded on the other side of price appreciation on the exchanges. I think there will be limited access. You'll be able to access it through the DEX on the network. And you'll have to participate in certain ecosystems to be able to access that. But as far as getting your assets off of there, anytime there's significant volatility, you're going to see the exchanges lock up or go down. We've seen that happen lots of times. What are you going to tell me about Ryan?
Actually, not Archuleta. He's talking about the advisor, Ryan, actually, the redhead.
That works for us?
Yeah, that's what he was asking about.
Okay.
I think.
Ryan's worked for us for a short period of time. He is one of our advisors, and he's cool. I haven't had a whole lot of interaction with him. I got to meet him in person at the DWP event that we put on in Denver not that long ago. We had a full day of education for our advisors there, and I met all of them in person. So, yeah, he's one of our advisors, so if that is legit, then that's legit. Not sure what else you want on top of that. And that's my fault. I didn't recognize his last name. We've hired a lot of people very quickly, and like I said, I know him by first name and know their face. Not as great with the last names. We got Living for Giving, very good name. They say, howdy Jake, LLC, Carbon One, onboarded with DWP. Awesome, dude. Okay, so we get price appreciation, 3 to 4 digits. Cool. Sell a small percentage of bag to pay debts and fund bucks. Okay. What's next? How to properly transfer to another LLC for real estate investing or personal use. Thank you. So, to be able to qualify for the S Corp election on your LLC, you need to pay yourself a reasonable salary in the eyes of the IRS. That's somewhere between $50,000 to $70,000 a year. Based on my conversations with other CPAs, again, I'm not a CPA. So you'd have to pay the W-2 or the employee self-employment tax on that. So Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all that stuff. It's an extra 13.5% on that $50,000 to $70,000 that you'd be taking out. The rest of that could flow through as dividends to you because it's a pass-through entity anyway. If you're going to take that money out, you can either have that LLC that owns the digital assets own another LLC that owns a property or something else, or you can pass that to your person, take it out as a dividend, and then invest it in a property in another LLC, and then use cost segregation analysis in order to be able to offset some of that income in the first year, somewhere between 70 and 75%, if it's an investment property. If it is, a residential property that you're going to live in, you're not going to have those advantages. But, if you're going to use the money for personal use, I would try to spend it out of the corporation if you can before moving it to your personal account. You want to maintain that corporate veil between your LLC and your personal accounts. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're going to subscribe to any publications or any investor newsletters, or you're going to attend any investor conferences, or you're going to travel to go meet with other people to talk about investments, or go to have dinner with people or lunch with people to talk about investments, network with other people, participate in the mastermind, all those things are tax deductions if you've spent that money out of the company. If you have an extra vehicle, let's say you went to go buy another vehicle that you want to drive around to do business, go look at properties and meet with people that were talking about or discussing investments, then that's okay, as long as you have a separate vehicle that's your personal vehicle, and then you have the vehicle that you bought specifically for your business, and you're documenting the miles on that and doing all the stuff your CPA tells you to do, then you can write that off, right? Any travel to the conferences that happen to be in exotic locations like Bora Bora or the Caymans or Tahiti, if there's a investor conference there of any type of investment conference, because your holding company is a company that invests in alternative assets, it could really be across the board, then all those things are write-offs, right? You and your wife can go. Your wife can be an officer of the company. So again, all these things, talk with your CPA, verify that that's correct. But that would be the way that I would do it. Anything that you pass to your person or your personal account, again, if it's for large amounts of money, probably have some other investment or something that you're going to put that into in a segregated LLC, and hopefully there's some way to be able to mitigate the taxes or use cost seg or something from the investment that you made to be able to offset the income that you're going to be receiving from those distributions. And again, that's just kind of a high level. I would have a conversation with your CPA, your accountant, your attorney, all those people to be able to kind of unify that and make sure that you're maintaining the corporate veil and doing all that you're supposed to for tax purposes. Great question, by the way. Anthony DeLuca, he says, what is the price potential for something like a Stronghold token over the next 3 to 5 years? So actually I made a video on Stronghold. If you want to go watch that, let's do some math. I'll walk you guys through the whole thing. So SHX token. All right. Currently trading at 0.05 of a penny. Total, the most it's ever gone to is 3 cents. Total supply is about 100 billion. Circulating supply is only just a little less than 6 billion. That's concerning. What's total daily volume on this thing? Doesn't really matter. Okay, so this gives me enough context. Let's look at the total addressable market for merchant services. Service payments. I'm gonna have to type it out. Total addressable market for merchant service payments. It's about $46.54 billion projected by 2030, currently $28.2 billion here in 2025. So let's say all of the Stronghold token is released, okay, full supply circulating. Well, actually, you know what? We'll try to make it higher. We'll say that we're just going to stick with, they're not going to release any more tokens. They're going to burn the rest of them. We're going to hold at 5 billion circulating supply. And the total merchant service market is $28.2 billion. So if they got 100%, just for perspective here, Stripe has like 5% of that market, and they are the largest player. Okay, I'll verify that in a second. I think that's the case. Let's see here. What percentage of the market does Stripe own? Actually, I take it back. It says about 20%. So Stripe, the largest player out there, has 20% of this market. So we're going to say that there's 6 billion total supply. It's not going to expand, which it's going to. This is like the tip of the eye. The best possible case scenario is what I'm going to give you. And we're going to say that they're going to get as big as Stripe. Okay? Stripe processed $1.4 trillion in total payments in 2024. Now, again, total addressable market for the payments was 28.2 billion. So let's do the math here. We're going to do 20% of 28.2 billion. Where'd my calculator go? Calculator, there it is. All right, so $28.2 billion times 0.2 for 20%. That is, so if it was a 1-to-1, 20% of that number is 5,640,000,000. Let's say that there was exactly that many Stronghold tokens. If they couldn't be used multiple times a day and they got that percentage of the market, and that was the liquid supply that wasn't being withheld, you know, by people holding on to it to be able to pay their fees or do whatever, that'd be like a $1 Stronghold token. Would be like the tippy top that I think it could ever get to for the application and the use case that they have. Now, from 0.05 of a penny, let's do the math on that real quick. $1 divided by 0.005, that's a 200x. But that's, again, I'm giving you what I think is the absolute best case scenario based on total addressable market, a comparable player in that space, and how much market share they currently have. I don't think they're ever going to get anywhere close to that. I don't think Stronghold's going to get, I think they would be lucky to get 1% of that market. I think that Stripe and the other merchant service providers will have their own tokens and own, you know, stable coins and other things that they do that completely disintermediate Stronghold. I think it's very similar to like a Bitcoin or an ETH in that it's a disruptor. It's showing what's possible, but the incumbents will either acquire them or they will build something that completely disintermediates them. Or they'll lobby for regulation that puts them out of business. So that's my 2 cents on it. Again, that's best case scenario. I think Stronghold could get to $1, Bob. But again, from 0.05 of a penny, that's still a lot of money that can be made in that token. So hopefully that gives you guys some context on like how I look at these things, an actual use case, total addressable market, circulating supply, and then the math behind how you figure that out. Ethan, he says, thank you for your wisdom, brother. I'm 23 and times are hard. Education like this is so empowering through the dark. Feels good to know with enough conviction we can take our own future into our own hands. I'll tell you what, dude, at 23 years old, I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I had just started at Fastenal when I was 23, and I was the youngest person that they had ever promoted to a sales rep that I was aware of. And I was, I thought that was cool. I got to drive around in a truck all day and talk to people and do that for a living. And I thought that was great because I like talking to people, and I don't necessarily care for selling stuff, but if I can solve problems for people, that's what I try to do. But I really value, the decade of experience I spent in industrial sales. Taught me how to run a business. It taught me how to manage people. It taught me about inventory, accounts receivable, accounts payable, like all the stuff that I went to school for finance, but a real world application of those things, and like how to actually look at CAC and LTV and, margin, all the things that you actually have to know to be able to run a business profitably. So hopefully, you're doing something similar. Hopefully, you kind of have an idea of where you want to go. I think most people don't figure out what they really want to do until you're in your mid-30s. That's what I've seen. A lot of people really don't have, and even later than that for a lot of people. A lot of people still kind of wander through the 30s not knowing exactly what they want to do. But if you can, the sooner you can figure that out, the sooner that you find your purpose, the faster you're going to be able to change your life and move toward that. So I wish, I went to school for finance. I knew that I wanted to do something in this field. But when I was your age, I was like, nobody's going to listen to me. 23 years old. I don't have any life experience or the wisdom to be able to tell somebody in their 40s or 50s or 60s, like, what they should be doing with their money. Why would they listen to me, type thing. And I'm not saying that to say that, that's not a possibility for you. Like I just said, Sebastian is a little bit older than you, and he's managing a book of that. This person said, white Dodge 2-door. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Over there at Fastenal. They actually have a really interesting model with those. So, if you have work trucks or anything, they buy those at scale. They drive them about 40,000 miles, 40 to 60,000 miles, and then they sell them for about what they paid for them because they buy the base package, but they get them at a super deep discount with the. But they did Chevy for a very short period, and then they went back to Dodge. So, Fastenal has, I don't know, a couple thousand locations across the U.S. at this point. They probably downsized since I worked there. But, yeah, I spent a lot of time at Fastenal. Look, you wouldn't think that's my background, but, I've been in crypto and wealth management and family office and all this stuff and M&A for the past 6 years. But for 9 years before that, I worked in industrial sales. 7 years of that was at Fastenal. Managed multiple locations for them. I ran the third largest location in Texas. Seems like a lifetime ago. Very different. Unfulfilling. Right, like that was the other thing that was different about that job. I liked what I did. I drove around and got to talk to people and solve problems, but anybody can do that, really. Like I didn't feel like I was providing the value that I could actually create for other people. There weren't hard problems. It was just like, hey, you're going to buy this anyway. Might as well buy it from somebody that's going to answer the phone and actually help you. Then, order it offline and hope that it's the right thing when it shows up. A couple more super chats. We got Native Texan. He says, Jake, what's up, sir? After price appreciation, will the 100K sign up still be good to go members? Not financial advice. Plan on working with you, small bag, not wanting to sell to compound. Thank you for all the positivity. Info is invaluable research. Appreciate that, man. I was actually talking about this earlier today. I'm not the CEO. Again, I'm the chairman. I can make strong suggestions on stuff at this point. I don't run the day-to-day. I don't make the final calls on stuff. What I will say is we're working to do everything we can to be able to democratize access at scale for the products and solutions that we're providing. The people that have more money, that, you know, kind of command more attention, right? They kind of expect more for the amount that they're paying. And so we want to create as much value as we can for everybody. But I think that there's going to be some tiers of access to certain things or products or solutions that we provide, and service level also. And so, you know, we're going to do our best to make sure that we keep it as low as we can. And we will work it lower over time. You've already seen us do that, right? So I can say this confidently. We started very high, and then we lowered it a couple times, and then we made that the minimum, and now we're lowering it down a little bit more so that more people get access to what we're doing. We want to do that. We want to help the little guy. Like, I didn't have help. I was a little guy too. I remember what that's like. I've been broke. Like I just told you guys, I drove beater cars for a lot of my life without air conditioning here in Texas. I know what that's like. And so anything that we can do to be able to help the little guy, make sure that they hold on to this and they're able to generate income off of it, they're able to structure it the right way so that their future generations have these assets, we want to do those things. But we also have to be cognizant of the resources and the systems that we currently have and where we're looking to go in the future. And so, you know, it's a balancing act between those two. And over time, the correlation that I give a lot of people when they ask this question is look at Tesla. Okay. Tesla started with the Roadster. They didn't start with the Robo-Taxi or the Robovin, okay, at $30,000 per Tesla. They started at $200,000 per Tesla, $150,000 per Tesla. And then over time, they've been able to democratize access to that product and bring the price way down so that the average person can buy one. We want to do the same thing, right? We're always going to have our private clients. We're going to have the high-level clients that have the family office services, but we also want to be able to democratize access at scale to all the cool financial solutions and products that we're creating. So all that being said, the answer is, I don't know. It's unlikely that we're going to keep it at 100K in the short term if we do see substantial price appreciation, just because I don't think we could handle the volume of clients with our current infrastructure. But that is a goal that we would love to get back to at some point in the future on the other side of it. This is a crazy name. I'm not going to try to say it. They say, Big Dog, do you think selling some and rotating some capital into stocks and ETFs is inappropriate for those under 10,000 XRP in terms of yield, especially if they may not be able to onboard DWP right away? Well, let's play it out. 10,000 XRP. I think XRP is going to go to at least $100 when it goes. Okay. And again, call me crazy, whatever you say. I think there's going to be a perfect storm of events that causes that to happen. Okay. So we're going to go with that in the assumption on this journey that we're headed on here. $100 times 10,000. I think that's $1 million, but I'm going to verify it on my handy dandy calculator. 100 times 10,000. $1 million. Okay. You would qualify. You'd be a client. Even at $100 XRP. At $1,000 XRP, you have $10 million. You would qualify. You would be a client. So you will have access to the stuff that we have, and we would love to onboard you and work with you when the price moves to those levels. We have access to be able to provide stocks and ETFs and bonds and pretty much all the other financial products that you would expect from a financial advisor. Many people move their total portfolio over to us to be able to manage the whole thing under one roof. That's not always the case. Many people already have a trusted advisor they work with on the other stuff, and they just use us for digital assets. And we're not trying to take anybody's business. We're just trying to add value. So if we add value by managing your total portfolio, awesome. If we just add value by managing digital assets, also awesome. But all that being said, I think that you'll be able to move over. You'll be a client. We would love to work with you, and you would be able to work with a financial advisor to be able to make those decisions. And if we have the yield product and the other things, then probably not. But many people will. Many people will diversify, and there's nothing wrong with that. You should only have to get wealthy or rich once. Now, when you're looking at the ROI on XRP, if it's $100, it's meant to operate at 10,000. How long does it take to get there? I don't know. I think a couple years, and then by 2030, we're looking at $100,000 XRP. So if we're looking at it from that instance, does diversifying make a whole lot of sense if it's a tier 1 asset designated by the BIS? Probably not, because it's riskless. So why would you sell it to move into something that was riskier, like a stock? But again, I'm not a financial advisor. You would want to speak with one of our financial advisors at DWP, or if you work with somebody else, to be able to determine those decisions. And again, it's not wrong to diversify and make sure that you're hedging risk. I'm going to grab one more here, and then we're going to wrap it up tonight. We got Marty. They say, brother and legend, all the best to you and yours, and see that you are carrying all the weight and the pressure with strength and pride. Thanks for your conviction, and that the reverse carry trade unwind is inevitable. Your predictions are impressive. Fair winds. Thank you, man. I appreciate the kind words and the confidence. Look, there's definitely a lot of weight. You know, I feel like, again, I'm super blessed and humbled all the time that so many people put weight in my words and take that into consideration when they're making their own decisions. I try to do my best to stay even keel, but also optimistic, and share that with other people, because there's a lot of people that need what other people call hopium. And reassurance is really what it comes down to, that their convictions or their investments and their conviction in their investments is going to pan out. I'm here and happy to do that for people, because I have never been more sure on XRP. I've never been more bullish on XRP. I had an interview with Ripple Prime this morning. Very high level of conviction that this is going to work out, and it's a good spot to be in. Again, I can't tell you what to do. You should not take that as investment advice. It's where I'm positioned, and if you want to take that into consideration when you speak with your financial advisor and talk to them about it, and they help you make those decisions, awesome. But you know, I do try to be pretty straight with you guys and just tell you where I'm at, and I'll always continue to do that. I don't like. I was talking to my assistant earlier about people being squishy and not giving their opinion on things, and you know, dodging questions. I'm not going to do that. I try to be level with the way that I present things, but I am going to give you my real honest, genuine opinion on stuff. Do I have any more super chats? We'll grab one more, and then we're going to wrap it up, because I'm already past time here. Justin says, my question is, I needed to get some of the equity up front to pay medical bills. The rest would likely be set up with DWP. How do I sell? My bank will freeze if I send to them. It's probably good. There will be an announcement on Thursday this week that I think you guys will be excited about, that would solve that problem for you. So you'll just have to wait till Thursday, and then you'll kind of have a better picture of what we're doing to make sure that you have the opportunity to not have an issue. I lied. I'm going to take one more. We got Jacob. He says, legend of all legendary legends. I know people feel discouraged right now, but just keep the faith and know things are going to work out. HODL. I think that that's a great message to end on. You know, we're finally seeing some price action on XRP toward the end of this broadcast here. Excited for everything that's happening here in the future. Hopefully you got some value from this. Again, if you want to join the mastermind, if you want more of this, if you like this, please like, subscribe, but also go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar. If you guys want to learn about the insurance that we offer, you know, the whole life policy that I talked about for myself, the term policy, that'll be convertible to whole life, the IUL for my son, stuff like that, go to Exure Legacy, XURE legacy.com, and you can book a consult with Carl and his team there. They're happy to, it's free. They'll walk you through things. They'll analyze your current policy if that's something you're interested in. Make sure it's structured right and it doesn't benefit, you know, the person that cut it for you and not you, which happens about half the time. A lot of them are set up good, but sometimes they're not so great. If you need the LLC, love to work with you on that. It's at digitalfamilyoffice.io for the LLC, and you can use the code 50OFF, 50OFFDAGLLC. That's 50OFFDAGLLC, all capitalized. Get you everything end to end for your LLC to manage your digital assets for $2,000. And then last but not least, if you have at least $100,000 in crypto and you would like to be able to get that in institutional custody and get access to institutional products with a financial advisor, you can go to digitalwealthpartners.net. And we are going to be making all this one thing in the near future also, because a lot of people have questions across the brands and the companies, and so we're just going to unify that under Digital Ascension Group, and you guys will see us rolling that out over the next couple months. So I hope that y'all have, my wife says consolidating, that's the word I was looking for. Thanks, babe. I hope that y'all have a wonderful night. Again, appreciate you taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me and ask great questions. We'll be back on the live Wednesday, and I look forward to seeing everybody from the mastermind over there at the Nashville event tomorrow night on St. Paddy's Day. So with that, God bless, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, TikTok. Y'all have a good night.